Hello world of YouTube and welcome to the listening log update for July of 2021. I've only got 9 albums to talk about this month. A far less amount than the last couple of months because, well, if you guys watched the update on the Patreon, July was a long month. But in August, I do have some catch-up game planned, along with some new releases obviously rolling out as well. But I did tackle some new stuff, some stuff that was sitting on my backlog, couple of heavy suggestions, all that sort of stuff. It's a well-rounded sort of episode still. So let's go ahead and get going. Backxwash's I Lay Here Buried With My Rings and My Dresses, a record that immediately came on my radar when I saw how much praise it was getting, how, strong it felt message-wise, and it got me really jazzed, because I love noisy hip-hop. You guys know that. I love clipping. I once made a starter kit for noisy, abrasive, industrial-tinged hip-hop. It's linked in the description. I liked this whole sound in hip-hop in general. And I gotta say, I really like this thing a lot. There's a lot of components that I think are so good. The intro, the Purpose of Pain loop, just really has this foreboding tone to it. The longer that it goes, it's like winding a guitar up, tuning a guitar. It just, you hear the tension gaining a little bit in the pit of your stomach until Wail of the Banshee just flies in hot and sets the tone for this entire experience. This record is so very good. The production on here is aces, whether it's the walls of sound or the way Backxwash's voice just sounds in the mix. The dichotomy of the chanting with the buoyancy and the flow of 666 and Lexaxa, and how hard it goes in lyrically is so good. The imagery painted on that song of people coming out of the woodwork and just stealing people, it's powerful, and it's so well done on that track. The frustrations poured out on Terror Packets, when talking about Backxwash going through her transition, is so fucking well executed on that song. Her voice is hit in such a hard way that I really enjoy. When the preacher sermon comes in on In Thy Holy Name, the fucking messaging on that song, it's all so good. I love Songs of Sinners. I think that the dichotomy and the verses and chorus of that song is insane. This record's so good. Backxwash kills it. This is like a 9 out of 10 experience. I really love this thing a lot. I think that it's fan-fucking-tastic. I think it's powerful. And I think that if you like noisy hip-hop, if you like really reflective stuff, both inward and outward, talking about your own grief and frustration, this is a great record. It is such a good experience that I think if you like noisy stuff, you'll like this record a lot. I'll be honest, I wasn't the most excited for this Sleater-Kinney record, if only because while I thought the prospect of St. Vincent working with them would have worked really well and The Center Won't Hold, I don't think it came together all that well. And it's a project that the band didn't stay whole throughout the end of, because Janet Weiss departed after that record's creation, and now here we are with a new record, Path of Wellness, with them as a 2-piece, and God, this record is so inconsistent. There's parts of it that are fine, but as a whole, this record feels even more frustrated than The Center Won't Hold, and there's even less cooks in the kitchen. It's self-produced. They're a 2-piece. They have session drummers, but, it's creatively just feels conflicted in a way that, as a fan of this band, and while listening to this record, led to a frustrating experience. Because while there's parts where certain attributes pop, like the bass on the title track, the drums actually pop on complex female characters, something that isn't true on a majority of the project, and it really feels like they're going for something on Tomorrow's Grave. Ultimately, the production inconsistencies and a lot of the writing just leaves components of this record feeling imbalanced and undercooked or not well harnessed, you know, because for a majority of the record, while I complimented the bass popping or the drums popping, the guitars by and large bury a lot of this record in a way that you would think would work for the band given their history, but just feels conflicted with the grooves and everything they're trying to present on this project. You know, there's a lack of urgency to this project that I feel like holds it back as well. And this project just feels, similarly to The Center Won't Hold, wrapped up in a frustration. And I'd say it's hard to pinpoint what the frustration really is, but you can tell by a lot of the bitter writing that this band still hasn't recovered in a lot of aspects from the loss of Janet and other attributes, and it sets this record back tremendously. There's components that I enjoy, but they're few and far between, and a lot of moments that I feel like should enjoy more. I'm not, because of those inconsistencies. Like, I really enjoyed the progression of Tomorrow's Grave, but as that song was sort of reaching its big crescendo, I feel like I should have been feeling more than I did, especially when it's followed up with a track like No Knives, this sort of acoustic, more intimate feeling cut. It feels like I should have been moved in a way that I just wasn't. And a lot of this record, you know, even the single bait tracks, like High in the Grass and Worry With You, just don't hit in the way that I feel like they should. There's certain things holding them back, and it leaves this record much more of a mess than even The Center Won't Hold was. You know, this feels like a far cry from No Cities to Love, the record that throttled them back into a sort of creative flourishment in a way that I was hoping would be followed up better in the following years. But this is another notch down in their belt, if you ask me. I'm giving this a 4. I'm really disappointed by this Sleater-Kinney project, and I wanted so much more out of it personally. Shout out to Crash Thompson one time. Thanks, buddy, for showing me Cheekface. A record that he and I were talking about, and he really wanted me to listen to, and we've already talked about my thoughts on it, but these guys, they're like an indie rock, sort of pop-punkish band that have a very particular style of vocal delivery. You know, you could compare it to like the Front Bottoms, or like Cake a bit. It's very talking in a cadence on a song sort of style, and I like that style. Like, I love Cake. I talked about that during my Comfort Eagle review, but I do really love Cake. I think that Cake are a great band. These guys tick that sort of similar thing with me in a way that I just enjoy so much. It is very pretentious, I will say. For as much as I enjoy it, it seems up its own ass, but it seems aware of it in a very, again, forward sort of way that I like. I think it's great, you know. Like, it's not without its fun, catchy moments on top of that as well. I think the opener, Listen to Your Heart No, is sort of the best example of them melding that sort of deadpan style with something very catchy. I feel like Emotional Rent Control also reaches a similar sort of feeling, along with the sort of chanting and Loyal Like Me. I feel like sonically, these guys have a really good pocket as well. I feel like the production on a lot of it, the instrumentation sounds really good. I will agree, I think the vocal production is a bit much. I feel like it doesn't need to be as forward in the mix as it is. But I think that everything around it is very, very good. You know, there's points where the guitar's kind of creeping under the vocals, like on Call Your Mom, or stand out with a nice sort of really energetic lead solo type thing, like on Original Composition. They give it kind of parquet chordish vibes. I'm throwing around all adjectives that I've seen other people compare this band to, because I feel like it's apt. You know, if you like those sounds melded together, you'll probably like this project. Some of the guitar production at points gives me vibes of stuff like what DPC were doing in like the 2000s. You know, I dig this thing a lot. I understand why it may be a deterrence for some people, especially that vocal delivery. But I personally dig it a lot. I think these guys are great. And I like this project, and I appreciate Crash for getting me into it. I'm giving this thing like an 8 out of 10. I think it's really solid. I think it's really, really great. While I don't think it'll be like high near the top of the year list, because mostly my 8s, my 9s, and my 10s will end up on there. But I could see this ending up in like the mid to low section, because I think it's a lot of fun. Again, the tracks don't really overstay their welcome, and I feel like it's a nice breezy listen, with some of those, flaws aside. On the complete opposite side of that catchy, sort of quirky stage is the newest USA-Mexico record, Del Rio, a record that I've been very excited for since the beginning of the year. If you caught some of the earlier listening log updates from the year, I've been waiting for this record to come out, and when it came out, it kind of fell past my radar. So now I'm picking it back up, and I'm giving it some spins, and I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing. I loved Matamoros a lot, their last record. I thought they were a great sort of representation of old school noise rock in a fresh way, or in a way that felt fresh because it's something that isn't explored quite like this in a raw sense. And I feel like Del Rio hits that lo-fi heavy edge even more, when the guitar shrieks come in on Chorizo, or the just abrasive ass, crackly, noisy production, like on the two staunching tracks that follow Chorizo, Soft Taco and Del Rio, envelop me in this just cacophonous sound that is really engaging in a way that I was hoping that it was Portal was, but it's a completely different type of thing, where they channel, like, blast beats in a low rumbling vocal style. This is just a sonic assault of shrieking, chunky guitars, muddled, low, thunderous drums, crackly distortion throughout the experience, and it's something very worthwhile. It feels like an adjacent vibe to what Matamoros gave me, but in a way that I still think is all the more enticing to me personally. I feel like if you enjoy large-scale noise pieces, you'll like aspects of this record. There's no vaporwave headache on here calling to a track from their last record that was very throttling and carried some energy into that noise. No, this is all brooding, heavy, foreboding, and unsettling, with just how staunching and sludgy it gets at a lot of points. There's points where it hits you, it really smacks you, but it does it in this sort of muddy, rumbling fashion that I really enjoy. I feel like there's always records that I pop on during a year and listen to for a listening log that I don't revisit as much as I should, and this is going to be one of those records. But I feel like if I'm in the mood for just some warm, lo-fi aggressiveness, I got a record to come to with Del Rio. I think this thing is great. I think this thing is dense, and I feel like if you like lo-fi noise, give this a shot. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a quality release, and I think you would too, if you like that sort of thing. Vince Staples, a rapper I try to keep my ears out for because I've liked some of his records well enough. I liked Big Fish Theory. It was on my honorable mentions for 2017, and I thought FM was easily his tightest and best execution of a concept yet. And his newest record, his self-titled release, sees him coming together with Kenny Beats in a small little album type of presentation, similarly to what Kenny Beats and Denzel Curry did last year with Unlocked, but I feel like these two don't quite come together in the same harmonious fashion. There's stuff that I like from this record, don't get me wrong, and I think that both Kenny and Vince have their moments where they shine. I feel like the sort of hazy sounds and sundown town see them coming together in a beautiful harmony. I think the low-key nature of Take Me Home also hits a really nice core, and I enjoy the production on the opener Are You With That and in Lakewood Mall, but I feel like there's a handful of moments that either just falter as a whole or components fall apart. Like, I'm not a big fan of Law of Averages all that much. While I think Vince is smooth on Taking Trips, I feel like the production doesn't hit quite as hard on that track. And for as small as this project is, there's a handful of pockets where I feel like it's trying to do something and failing at that execution. I think the stories on Lakewood Mall and The Apple in the Tree actually add a lot more to the concepts of the record, or at least any sort of storytelling elements than Vince even produces on some of the tracks himself. Like I said, I know he's trying to do something on Law of Averages, but I really don't think that it comes across all that well. I feel like this project is far more inconsistent than FM or Big Fish Theory, and it's a little upsetting. It's very solid. It's still very solid because of, again, the components that I do like, but given how much I loved his last two records and how well he melded with those different types of production, I was hoping it would shine with Kenny Beats in the same way it did for Denzel Curry, but it just doesn't to me, and it's upsetting. It's still not awful. It's far from the worst thing I've heard this year. I feel like it's still a very decent hip-hop record in the year, but it's also still not one of the best of the year either. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. It's very average, but even as the closer is rolling through, I'm left feeling with a desire for more, and it just doesn't deliver on the first listen or any subsequent listens, and that's disappointing. Decided to check out this Japanese breakfast record, Jubilee, because I've been seeing it get a lot of praise or hype throughout the general scene, and this is my entry point into the Korean singer-songwriter's discography. I don't know anything about her stuff, and I'm walking away from Jubilee incredibly pleased. I think that this record is fantastic. There's a lot of great juxtapositions and sounds here that meld together into this beautiful harmony. You know, the tracks like the opener Paprika and Kokomo, Indiana, with their sort of arrangements and swinging grooves at points, meld really well with the shoegazy crescendos on Sit, which is easily one of my favorite songs of the year. When that track just washes over you, it's truly a beautiful experience. Or the closer, Posing for Cards, is guitars that come in that great climax. Go really well also with the synthetically driven tracks like Be Sweet, which has this 80s sort of throttling sheen to the percussion, to the synthetics, or tracks like Slide Tackle and Posing for Bondage, which have their own sort of vignettes in the electronic experimentation. This record is incredible. I love a lot of the hook work that's on here. I feel like her voice soars in a lot of really good ways and has a great use of melody to it. I think she's a great singer. I think that she nails it on this record. You know, there's a real intimacy and rawness that comes from some of the lyrics on tracks like Posing and Bondage. You know, I think part of the reason why the swell and Sit hit so hard is because I really like the lyrics of that track as well. With the caught up in the idea of someone, caught up in the idea of you, that's gone too soon, just pairs really well with those with the swelling lushness that the instrumentation has. And I think part of the reason why this record works so well is because it transitions across those different styles so perfectly as well. Like the fact that Be Sweet is wedged between Paprika and Kokomo, Indiana without feeling like a misstep is magical. And it again just has this unifying umbrella of quality amidst all of the divergence that the record takes that I think it excels in. While I don't love every song on here, I think Savage Good Boy is fine. And Tactics is a track that I like, but not quite as much as others. This record still sits pretty highly to me. I think that it's very, very good, and I feel like if you love talented, diverse collections of tracks, you'll enjoy a lot of the components on Jubilee. I think that it's got a lot of really good things going on sonically, and I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very quality record that is very much worth your time.
You ain't nothing but a lost cause, and this ain't nothing.
This might be one of the most anticipated records within the general pop scene this year. Billie Eilish's follow-up to her breakout record, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? A record that I was very lukewarm on. I liked components of it, but I also didn't like components of it. And while I admired her dedication to having it be mostly just her and her brother in the process of that record, I feel like it didn't quite live up to the potential that I saw in her as an artist. I felt like it definitely showed her to be a good songwriter, and I felt like she did have a good harnessing of tone on that project, but I left that record wanting more. And on Happily Ever After, I absolutely got that. This is what I feel like everyone else was seeing that I didn't see on When We All Fall Asleep, because I think that this record is far more consistent, showcases not only hers, but Phineas's talents as musicians and artists so very well, and is such a fantastic release. I don't mind the lower key approach to a lot of this. You know, it makes moments like Oxytocin pop even harder. But I do like that within a lot of this lower key presentation, Billie and Phineas both still experiment with sonic ideas that I think come across incredibly well and fit some of the realness or at least personality within a lot of the writing that Billie's presenting on this project. You know, there's a sense of distaste or frustrations leaving components of this record. You can tell Billie's clearly going through shit, whether it's her relationship observance, like on tracks like Therefore I Am, a song that I loved immediately when it dropped. I was like, yeah, and that was the sort of shifting point. When I heard that, and I was like, yeah, this is it. I was sold. I was already really anticipating this record because I liked that track a lot, and I still do. And I think it comes at a good point in the record as well. That also comes up in some of the coldness on tracks like Lost Cause. You know, her dealings with the fame and, getting older. A lot of Billie's time in the spotlight has been very chronicling based. You know, she does the same interview every single year, sort of reflecting on where she's been, and that crops up on tracks like Getting Older or Not My Responsibility. And I think it comes across pretty well as well. You know, I feel like the minimalism and Not My Responsibility works a little better in context with the visuals that it was provided with, but I still think that its message is still very strong, in a very good way. I enjoy tracks like Billie Bossa Nova's form of sort of injecting some smoothness into a relaxed vibe that doesn't necessarily feel super minimal. I like how raw and passionate she sounds on Oxytocin. You know, I think the transition from that into Goldwing smoothness is beautiful. The flow of this record is fantastic. I feel like I don't like some songs as much as others. I definitely think that the closer Male Fantasy doesn't necessarily fit in the track listing, at least where it is. While I like Overheated Sentiment, I feel like it's a little too stripped down in a way that Not My Responsibility feels like it could have fallen in the same folly too, but is brought up by its songwriting. Overheated doesn't have that same luxury. I feel like the hook on that track is a little lazy, but the groove at its core is still pretty solid. You know, even the components that I don't necessarily like as much are brought up by an aspect in the record, whether it be Phineas's production or some of the songwriting within the track itself. You know, this is definitely a notch above When We All Fall Asleep by a decent margin to me. I feel like she presents a whole lot of emotion in a great range on this project. You know, even the leg from Haley's Comet through Your Power, where everything's sort of in a minimal key, NDA kind of creeps in at the right time to hit you with a 1-2 punch of it, and Therefore I Am. You know, this project feels like it was put together very methodically in a good way, and I appreciate that. And I like this record a hell of a lot more than When We All Fall Asleep, and I'm giving it the praise that I'm sure some of you think I should have given to that record. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. I think it's fantastic. I feel like she and Phineas did it in a much better way, a much more concise way, and again, utilized Billie's talents and Phineas's talents a little better to paint a real feeling picture of herself. Something that I feel like she was trying to do then, and has done a lot in certain aspects of her press circuit really, really well. A quality release that has a great balance of hooks and songwriting.
They can't front 'cause they all know I keep it trail like Mike Jones.
The same cannot be said with Logic's inevitable return with Bobby Tarantino 3, a sequel to 2 mixtapes that I actually talked about recently on the channel. I did a redacted on those projects, and you know, I didn't expect this to be Logic's comeback, a sequel to those tapes, but it kind of feels serendipitous, I guess. It's a project that I still wasn't all that excited for, though. Like, yeah, while I talked about, you know, potentially missing Logic, realistically, I did not think when he actually said he was coming back, he would come with a complete consistent project, especially since he sort of teased this one for a while, I feel like, before his retirement. You know, and there's components of this mixtape that I think are fine, or this record that I think are fine, you know, but a lot of this feels underbaked and half-assed, you know. Even the intro, like the jokes in this record don't quite always hit. You know, the intro, it goes on for way too long, but the stupid skit's actually kind of funny to me. You know, I feel like tracks like Flawless and Theme for the People and See You Space Cowboy are decent enough. Tracks like that don't crop up enough on the project. You know, I think Vaccine and Get Up feel very empty with their sort of sentiments they want to express. My Way takes too long to end, and Call Me has the longest fade in album history. And I'm not gonna lie, when God Might Judge was on, I thought he was talking about Mike Judge, the animator, just because that song feels so ambiguous with everything it's got going on. This record is a mess. It is a mess that I don't like. I'm not, again, wholly surprised that I don't love it. It still kind of sucks to see Logic just sort of treating his comeback as this sort of turd into the world experience. You know, it's less ambitious than Supermarket, but it feels just about as scattershot as that project in a really bad way. I'm giving this a 3 because there are some tracks with components that I do enjoy, but as a whole, a lot of the production, a lot of the song choices, a lot of the ideas feel half-assed, and I don't like that. You know, I'll always stick a hand out for Fear Factory. They're a band that I got into at a young age, and as I got older, I kept respinning because I like their sort of if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach to infusing industrial adjacent sounds with groove and thrash metal roots and death metal roots. You know, I feel like they're quite like bands like Slayer and Lamb of God in that regard, and where I can look into a record of theirs and know what I'm going to get and be perfectly fine with that. And while this is their last record, unfortunately, with Burton C. Bell, because he has actually finally left the band after so much turmoil and frustration, I feel like he didn't go out on quite the worst note. He's easily the best component of this record. His vocals still have a good mix of bite and soaring when it comes to the chorus work on this record. You know, tracks like Recode and Aggression Continuum and Manufactured Hope have moments where the synthetics creep in and his voice soars above the thrashing guitars and pounding drums. And I feel like the band themselves pull together some really still tight, thrash-infused moments, like on Cognitive Dissonance or Disruptor, and fuel-injected Suicide Machines chugging groove-style riffs still evoke the same feeling in me as it does whenever I listen to a multitude of parts of the discography. Is it anything special in that regard? No. Is it anything mind-blowing or groundbreaking by this band's standards? Not quite. The production is a little crunchy, like it's very modern in that sort of sense, and that the guitars and drums definitely feel like they have this sheen to them, this sort of glossy coating amidst its distortion that I could see people taking issues with, and does set it back a little bit for me personally. But the points that I enjoy are the points where they're just hitting me with riffs, you know, Dino's really doing his thing while Burton's just screaming his guts out. You know, the lyrics are all very in line with a lot of what Fear Factory sings about with, you know, corruption and distortion and mechanized fusing and cybernetic dystopia. That's, again, very much their MO for a lot of their career. But it still hits in a way that I enjoy by and large. Similarly to the Cannibal Corpse record, I walked into this record expecting one thing, getting that thing, and leaving relatively pleased. You know, and I feel like if you like Fear Factory, you'll either enjoy that or not because you want them to do something different. But I'd rather them do more stuff like this than their experiments they did in the late 90s. You know, Fear Factory are one of those bands I wouldn't mind talking about someday because I do like a lot of their records, and there's components, even though they get a little samey, that I like above some more than others, similarly to like Lamb of God and Slayer. But either way, it's a Fear Factory record, you know what you're getting, and that's perfectly fine. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It's got moments that slap, it's got really good riff work at points, and I really like Burton's stuff here. And it's a shame that he has left the band and won't be back anymore. But those are the records I listened to this month. What did you think about them? Did you like them? Did you not? Let me know in those comments down below. If you did like this video and you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons if you want to join the ranks to get early access to content, exclusive content, or to help drive the community. It's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here, though. Thank you so very much again for watching. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.
You